Difficulty in games is often subjective, but I'm on a quest to find out how difficult some of my favorite game series actually are, objectively speaking. If you're new here, here's the idea. Life's gotten busier, gaming has gotten noisier, and live service games have turned keeping up into a second job with worse benefits. Meanwhile, a lot of single-player experiences that made me love games in the first place have been pushed further into the background. So I decided to go back to the series I grew up with and replay them with fresh eyes. Part nostalgia trip, part difficulty test, part excuse to stop pretending I want to grind daily challenges forever. This video is the start of the Halo series. So I recorded and noted every death I racked up while playing, and at the end of it all, I'll be able to say objectively which game in the series is hardest and why. Heading into the first game, in a new series, I was thinking it can't be that hard, right? You wouldn't want to turn people away from a new franchise, right? God, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Fuck. Fuck! Well now, maybe it's harder than I expected, but let's jump into it. Halo starts with panic, not wonder. The Covenant board the Pillar of Autumn, the ship is breaking apart, and the immediate goal is to get Cortana off the ship and survive the escape. It's a smart opening because the story says, stay simple and urgent. You're not here to absorb a giant lore lecture while the walls are on fire. You're here to move, fight, and keep humanity's very expensive green problem solver alive long enough to reach an escape pod. Before Halo becomes about ancient mysteries and galaxy-level stakes, it starts as a military retreat that has already gone very badly. This mission feels like Halo teaching the player its combat rules without ever pausing to wag a finger. The corridors are narrow, the fights are compact, and every room quietly asks whether you understand target priority yet. Grunts are there to build rhythm, jackals aren't here yet, but they make you think about angles, and elites arrive to explain that confidence is not the same thing as a plan. The pacing is straightforward, but it works because the level keeps introducing pressure in small, readable doses. You start to feel Halo's real identity almost immediately. This is not a shooter about sprinting forward and vacuuming bullets into everything that moves. It's about shields, positioning, weapon choices, and knowing when a room belongs to you versus when it doesn't. First mission kicked off with a death count of 11, so right away the series seems like it's going to be significantly harder than the BioShock series. Either way, this mission does its job by punishing any attempt to play like the assault rifle alone is a personality. Mission 2 is where Halo finally shows its hand. After crash landing on the ring, Chief steps out of the lifeboat and gets his first real look at Installation 04, with Cortana sending him to search for other survivors of the Pillar of Autumn. The mission is built around moving between scattered crash sites, helping stranded Marines hold off Covenant attacks, and surviving long enough for extraction. It's also the first real look of the on-the-ground ring as a place instead of just a backdrop, and that matters because Halo immediately stops feeling like a ship escape story and starts feeling like an adventure in a strange, beautiful, suspiciously well-maintained alien world. It's also the first level to introduce jackals and banshees, which is the game politely informing you that your day can get far worse, in fact. This mission feels like Halo opening up its lungs. After the tight corridors of the Pillar of Autumn, suddenly you're in wide valleys, driving a warthog, scanning the terrain, and picking fights across much bigger spaces. The pace is looser, but the combat still has a bite, because every rescue encounter turns into a little sandbox story about angles, cover, and whether your Marines are about to help, or mostly just shout encouragement while missing everything important. The real magic is the sense of scale. Seeing the ring curve overhead is one of the moments that makes the whole game feel larger than its plot summary. It's peaceful for about 3 seconds, then Covenant arrive to ruin the scenery like extremely rude park rangers. I racked up 23 deaths here. The mission is broader and more chaotic, so it tests whether you can handle Halo when the training wheels come off and the battlefield gets a lot less polite. Mission 3, Truth and Reconciliation. Mission 3 is the first time Halo stops asking you to survive and starts asking you to hit back. After learning that Captain Keyes is being held aboard a Covenant cruiser, Chief joins a night assault with a squad of Marines to rescue him before the Covenant can do anything worse than their usual hobby of shooting everyone on sight. The level begins as a stealthier insertion than anything the game has attempted so far, then turns into full boarding action once you are inside the ship. Story-wise, it matters because this is the first real counterattack by the humans, and it gives the campaign a shot of momentum. Instead of just picking through the wreckage of the Autumn, you're now taking the fight onto Covenant turf and proving that Chief is not just good at escaping disasters, he's also very good at delivering one. This mission feels like Halo tightening the screws. The nighttime opening is one of the game's best mood shifts, with the beach approach making everything feel quieter, more tactical, and just a little more dangerous. Once you board the ship, the level turns into a brutal series of corridor fights with elites, narrow sightlines, and plasma fires start piling pressure on fast. It is less open than the previous mission, but more intense because the combat spaces are tighter and every enemy resistance feels meaner. This is also where Halo starts trusting the player more. It expects you to understand shields, grenades, and weapon swapping by now, and if you don't, the Covenant are more than happy to provide remedial education at close range. I racked up 27 deaths here. This is the first mission that really feels like Halo saying, alright, enough sightseeing, show me what you've actually learned. This moves us into Mission 4, the Silent Cartographer. Mission 4 is where Halo stops feeling like a desperate survival story and starts feeling like a new, real military operation on alien ground. Chief and the Marines launch an assault on Covenant-held island in order to find the Silent Cartographer, a map room that can reveal the location of Halo's control room. The whole mission has a strong sense of purpose because you're not just rescuing survivors or reacting to disaster anymore. You are pushing forward with a clear objective and finally learning more about what the ring actually is. Story-wise, it's a big step because Halo starts moving from pure combat urgency into mystery. The ring is no longer just some pretty scenery with a body count, it's a structure with secrets, and naturally, every one of those secrets is guarded by a small army that seems deeply opposed to your research methods. This is one of the first missions where Halo fully clicks as a sandbox shooter. The beach landing is fantastic because it gives the level an immediate burst of scale, motion, and chaos. Then the island opens into a mix of outdoor skirmishes, warthog movement, and tighter indoor fights below ground. The contrast is what makes the mission so memorable. 1 minute, you're charging past gunfire in broad daylight. The next, you're clearing narrow corridors where one elite can subtly turn the room into a very bad life decision. The pacing stays sharp because the level keeps changing its shape without losing momentum. It feels adventurous, readable, confident, in a way that makes the whole game seem smarter and cooler at the same time. I racked up 22 deaths here. It feels right, the mission is fair, but asks you to handle both open vehicle chaos and tighter interior pressure without getting cocky in either one. Next up is Mission 5, Assault on the Control Room. Mission 5 is where Halo takes the mystery it has been building and wraps it inside one long, icy military grind. After locating the control room, Chief has to fight his way across a huge stretch of snowy canyons, bridges, and fortified Covenant positions to finally reach it. On paper, the objective is simple: get to the control room. In practice, the level turns that goal into a full day at the office for anyone wearing power armor. Story-wise, this mission matters because it pushes Chief deeper into the ring structure and keeps the campaign moving toward an answer about what Halo actually does. It also starts making the ring feel bigger and harsher. Up to this point, Halo has been dangerous. Here, it starts feeling committed. This mission feels like Halo deciding you've had enough fun and are now ready for employment. The scale is greater, with big snowy spaces, vehicle sections, and constant forward momentum, but the difficulty jumps hard because the Covenant are everywhere and they suddenly seem far more interested in ruining your plans with discipline and enthusiasm. Turrets lock down open areas, banshees harass you from above, and groups of elites start showing up like management heard productivity was slipping. The level can be thrilling when the combat sandbox is working and you're weaving between vehicles, chaos, and infantry fights. But it also starts flirting with repetition because the mission is so long and asks you to survive wave after wave of resistance. It is impressive, exhausting, and occasionally feels like Halo testing whether your confidence was based on skill or just good weather. Death count. I mentioned the difficulty spike, right? This level took nearly 2.5 hours for me to finish, and I racked up a whopping 60 deaths. That's more deaths in one mission than any of the BioShock games. This mission absolutely, stop being polite. The jump in difficulty is real. The numbers suggest a level that is memorable, partly because it keeps asking with increasing disrespect whether you are actually good at Halo. Part of the struggle was I got stuck in a loop where I hit a checkpoint with virtually no health and no med packs to alleviate the issue. This is also my first time playing the first Halo game, so I didn't know the mission route. And I got hard stuck in a spot that I could have actually skipped past, so retrospectively speaking, I could have performed better on this level, but oh well, the authentic first-time playing experience is one of struggle. This moves us into Mission 6, 343 Guilty Spark. After the struggle session on Mission 5, Mission 6 is where Halo stops being a military sci-fi shooter and turns into a horror game that absolutely did not warn you before changing genres. After following a distress signal into a swamp, Chief is sent to investigate the disappearance of the Marine squad led by Captain Keyes. What starts as another rescue mission slowly unravels into something much worse as abandoned structures, scattered bodies, and panicked recordings reveal that the Covenant are no longer the biggest problem on the ring. Story-wise, this is one of the most important missions in the game because the game completely changes what Halo is about. Up to this point, the campaign has been about fighting the Covenant and unlocking the ring's secret. Here, Halo reveals the secret was basically, what if everything got much more terrible all at once? This mission feels tense in a totally different way than the earlier levels. The swamp is dark, claustrophobic, and miserable in exactly the right way, and pacing slows down just enough to make you suspicious before the game finally drops the flood on you like a piano from the ceiling. Once that happens, the combat gets messier, faster, and way more frantic than the cleaner Covenant fights. Enemies rush you, bodies pile up, and the whole level becomes about staying calm while the game works very hard to make sure you don't. It's one of Halo's best tonal swings because it does not just tell you the situation got worse. It makes you feel it in every hallway, every scream, and every movement, where you realize the shotgun is now your best friend. Thankfully, the Flood are way easier to handle, so only 3 deaths here, which makes up for the last mission. This mission is more about tension and shock rather than difficulty, so the danger sticks in your memory even if the body count doesn't. This gets us to Mission 7, the Library. Mission 7 is where Halo takes its new horror turn and doubles down on it with industrial determination. After meeting 343 Guilty Spark, Chief is sent into the library to retrieve the index, which is supposedly needed to activate Halo and stop the flood. Story-wise, this mission matters because it pushes Chief deeper into the ring's real purpose while also making Spark seem just helpful enough to trust and strange enough to absolutely not trust. The bigger shift is that the campaign is no longer about surviving the Covenant or uncovering the ring's mystery from a distance. You're now inside the machinery of Halo itself, doing a job for a floating light bulb who talks like he's never once been told that sounds like a terrible idea. The library feels like Halo testing how much flood combat you can enjoy before it becomes a spiritual endurance event. The atmosphere is strong with endless metallic halls, elevator stops, and waves of enemies pouring in from every direction, but the mission leans hard into repetition. Combat becomes a constant churn of backing up, blasting Flood at close range, throwing grenades into crowds, and trying not to get boxed in by enemies who clearly did not receive the memo about personal space. The shotgun does a lot of emotional heavy lifting here. So does patience. There is still tension because the Flood remain fast and messy, but the real challenge is the mission's length and sameness. It's memorable, but partly because it feels like being trapped inside the galaxy's most hostile office building. I racked up 26 deaths here. The mission is not just hard in the normal sense, it's draining, repetitive, and very willing to punish any lapse in attention. After we do that, we move into Mission 8, 2 Betrayals. Mission 8 is where Halo rips the floor out from under the entire campaign. After retrieving the index, Chief learns that activating Halo will not stop the flood, it will wipe out all sentient life that could feed them, which is a bit of a rough detail for Spark to leave out. Cortana yanks Chief off the activation path and sends him to shut down the ring by disabling the pulse generators. Story-wise, this is one of the game's biggest turning points because the mission reframes everything. The Covenant are no longer the only enemy, the Flood are spreading everywhere, and the helpful floating robot is now firmly in the absolutely not invited back category. 2 Betrayals feels like Halo taking a familiar level and mutating it into something meaner, busier, and much less polite. The mission reuses the structure of Assault on the control room, but now every fight is messier because Covenant, Flood, and Sentinels all crash into each other while you try and keep up. That makes the combat more dynamic, but also more exhausting because the level keeps throwing chaos at you from every angle. 1 second, you're trying to clear a path through elites and turrets. The next, the Flood show up like they heard there was free food. Then there's a cool sense of escalation in seeing old spaces transformed by the new war, but the mission is also a grind. A little less of a grind than the first time playing on this map, but it is exciting, repetitive, and unpredictable enough to keep you locked in even while it's clearly trying to ruin your afternoon. I racked up 35 deaths here. It tracks, and this is almost half as much as the first time playing this map. This mission raises the difficulty by turning familiar ground into a three-way disaster, which makes every encounter feel less controlled and a lot more rude, but clearly my skill at the game mechanics has increased, so it wasn't so bad. This gets us into Mission 9, Keys. Mission 9 sends Chief back towards the wreck of the Truth of Reconciliation to find Captain Keyes because Cortana needs his command authorization, or at this point, just his neural implants to access the Pillar of Autumn and turn the ship itself into Halo's worst day. What starts as a rescue mission quickly becomes a recovery mission once it's clear the Flood got to Keyes first. The shift matters a lot for the story because it gives the campaign one of the bleakest turns. Halo is no longer about preventing disaster before it happens. Disaster is already here. It's spreading. And now, even one of the game's few stable authority figures has been reduced to biological group project gone horribly wrong. Keyes feels nasty in a very deliberate way. The opening is chaotic, the ship is darker, and more ruined than before. The whole mission has the energy of walking back into a place you once understood, only to find it has become a haunted meat locker with terrible lighting. Combat is tense because the Covenant and Flood are still colliding, which means fights can break open in weird directions and ruin any cleanup path that you thought you had. The real weight of the mission comes from the mood, though. This is not heroic forward momentum, it's a grim cleanup. By the time you actually reach Keyes, the level lands one of the game's ugliest images and makes the cost of the Flood feel personal instead of just monstrous. I racked up 23 deaths here. It's not the hardest mission mechanically, but the darkness, chaos, and general everything is disgusting now pressure makes it very easy to lose control fast. This gets us to the end of the game, Mission 10, the Maw. Mission 10 brings Halo full circle by sending Chief back to the Pillar of Autumn for one last act of controlled catastrophe. With Halo's real purpose exposed and the ring being overrun by Covenant, Flood, and Sentinels, the plan is no longer to save the installation, it's to destroy it by overloading the Autumn's fusion reactors and escaping before the whole place comes apart. Story-wise, it's a great finale because it turns the game's opening setting into its ending battlefield. The ship that once represented retreat now becomes the weapon that lets Chief take the entire ring down with him, very much preferring not to still be on it when it happens. The Maw feels like Halo cashing out every strength it has left in the tank. Returning to the Autumn is instantly effective because the familiar ship now feels wrecked, infected, and far less interested in pretending things are under control. The combat has urgency, but the real star is the pacing. This mission understands that a finale should escalate, so it keeps pushing up from tense interior fights into legendary Warthog escape run. The last sequence is pure Halo magic. It's fast, messy, cinematic, and just unstable enough to make every jump feel like a brilliant plan made by someone who already accepted several bad outcomes. It's one of the few finales that actually feels like a payoff instead of a victory lap. This mission, I racked up 11 deaths. It's a strong finish. It suggests the mission is tough, but readable, with the danger coming more from pressure and speed than from cheap punishment. Big picture, Halo works because it keeps changing shape without losing its core identity. It starts as a clean military retreat, opens into a wide sandbox combat on the ring, turning into sci-fi horror the second the Flood show up. The combat loop is what holds all of it together. Heroic is the way devs intended the game to be played, and it's definitely a good challenge. No breezing through combat, shields create rhythm, weapon swapping actually matters, enemies are readable without being boring, and every fight feels like a small decision-making test instead of a firing range. Even when the game drags, the library absolutely clocks in like it's billing overtime. Halo still feels distinct because the mechanics are doing real work every second. What makes the game matter even more is that it builds the entire series blueprint in one shot. I wasn't in love with the story so much, but what can you expect from the first game in the series? The ring itself gives the world mystery, Cortana gives the story focus, and the mission structure keeps alternating between wonder, pressure, and outright panic. The campaign gets stronger as it goes because the stakes stop being abstract. By the end, you're not just fighting to survive, you're trying to stop a galaxy-scale disaster with a dead captain, a suspicious robot, and one increasingly overworked warthog. There is no previous Halo to compare to, which only makes the achievement bigger. This game had invented the tone, the rhythm, the sense of scale that the rest of the franchise would spend years refining. Final verdict: Halo is the foundation of the series, and still one of the strongest entries, a game whose combat sandbox atmosphere and pacing made Halo feel instantly iconic. All that said, how hard was it? Well, if you were keeping count, I racked up a total of 241 deaths. For those who watched my BioShock series, that's over 6 times harder than the BioShock games. But the real question is, how does it measure up to Halo 2? Is Halo 2 actually hard, or do we just remember it that way because we were 12 and had infinite free time? I wanted a real answer, so I replayed it and tracked every single death. And let me tell you right now, this game was not gentle. What starts as a bigger, louder sequel turns into a full-scale war story with an anger problem. And by the back half, it's throwing some truly disrespectful fights at you. That's the point of this series. I'm going back through the games I grew up with, counting every death, and figuring out which Halo game is actually the hardest. And Halo 2 made a very strong case for itself. Going in, I had a pretty simple thought. A sequel this early in the franchise shouldn't be brutal, right? Oh, fuck. That would have been a death. No! Fuck! Son of a bitch, dude. Halo 2 clearly didn't get that memo. The first mission of the game is actually just a cutscene, the Heretic, and it starts off with a bang. The storytelling is immaculate right away, giving us more insight into the Covenant while also planting the seeds for what is coming later in the game. The scene is about Thiel Vandemine being blamed for the destruction of Installation 04, publicly shamed by the prophets. However, this is just the start of what's to come. It's a really strong opening because before Halo 2 even gets into the action, it's already setting up bigger themes like faith, truth, and what eventually becomes the unraveling of Covenant loyalty. I know I get a lot of flack for playing Halo 2 anniversary graphics, but these cutscenes are so damn good, and I never played Halo 2 back in the day, so the hooks of nostalgia don't have me. This moves us into Mission 2, the Armory. The first real mission kicks off with a pretty funny rewrite of the ending of the first game. Last I checked, Cortana said we were the only survivors. But through some classified magic, Sergeant Johnson is suddenly alive and well. So now we're getting an award for saving the day. That ceremony doesn't last long though, because the Covenant immediately crashed the party and turned a polished military celebration into absolute chaos. From there, Cairo Station becomes a desperate effort to stop the boarding attack, holding the station's defenses and keeping the Covenant from turning humanity's own weapons against them. Story-wise, it's a great opener because it quickly shifts from victory lap to full emergency and makes Earth's invasion feel serious right away. This moves us right into Mission 3, Cairo Station, and it feels like Halo 2 politely opening the door for you and then immediately hitting you with it. The mission is tight, fast, and full of compact firefights that make it very clear this game has less patience for sloppy play than the first one. The corridors keep the pressure on, the elites already act like they have a personal grudge against you and your health bar, and every room feels like it was designed by someone who thought cover was more of a suggestion. It's a great opener because it feels cinematic without letting you relax, which is basically Halo 2's whole personality. It wants you to feel cool, but only after you survive being bullied by plasma fire for 20 minutes. Either way, with the new battle rifle in hand, it's a blast. Last game, the pistol was our trusty steed. This time, the battle rifle is a strong contender for taking its place. Let's talk about death count. By the end of this mission, I had already racked up 16 deaths, which was a pretty clear sign that Halo 2 was not interested in easing me in. The challenge feels fair enough to read, but the game opens with real pressure and expects you to adjust immediately. Still, those 16 deaths felt worth it because the mission ends with Chief reminding everyone he's absolutely not here to mess around by taking a giant Covenant bomb and personally delivering it back to the sender. The cutscene alone sold me. I was like, yep, this is going to be a close contender for my favorite game in the series, but we will see at the end of it all. as I go back and play Halo Reach, which is the game I had the most time on growing up. After Chief's very direct interpretation of Return to Sender, Halo 2 wastes no time dropping us straight into the consequences. The Covenant are now fully pouring into Earth, and instead of fighting in relative safety of a station, we are now thrown into the streets of New Mombasa, where the invasion feels much more immediate and chaotic. The goal shifts from stopping a boarding action to rallying scattered Marines, pushing through the city, and trying to regain some kind of control while the Covenant tear through everything in sight. Story-wise, this is where the war on Earth starts to feel real, because the fight is no longer some heroic set piece in orbit. It is boots on the ground, humanity's on the back foot, and Chief once again being asked to clean up a situation that has gone very far off schedule. Outskirts feels like Halo 2 taking the training wheels off and replacing them with sniper fire. Cairo Station keeps things cramped and controlled, but this mission throws you in a city full of open sightlines, weird angles, and enough Covenant crossfire to make every corner feel like a bad financial decision. The pacing is great because it keeps changing the kind of pressure on you. One fight, you're moving building to building with Marines, the next has you dealing with jackals and rooftop fire that can end your plans before your brain finishes processing what happened. It's one of those missions where the scale feels exciting, but the game also starts hinting that Earth is not a playground. It's a place where Halo 2 fully discovers the joy of putting enemies in place that seem specifically chosen to annoy you. Outskirts also introduces vehicle play, jackal snipers, hunters, and phantom pressure, which is a very efficient way of saying the game is broadening the sandbox while also broadening the list of things that can ruin your afternoon. Death count. 9 deaths is actually pretty reasonable here, especially because Outskirts introduced a lot of new threats and a much more exposed style of combat. That number suggests the mission is challenging without being overwhelming, and that its chaos is mostly readable, even when the game starts pulling out some very rude enemy placement. It's a good sign that Halo 2 is hard, but not every mission is trying to immediately send you into orbit emotionally. After fighting through the streets in the outskirts, Metropolis turns the battle from New Mombasa into a full counterattack. Chief links up with Marines and pushes deeper into the city, moving from scattered resistance to a direct effort to break the Covenant hold on the area. The big new problem is the Scarab, which tears through the city and shrugs off the kind of firepower that would normally solve most problems. Story-wise, the mission is great because it makes the Covenant invasion feel bigger and more organized, while also giving Chief another classic hero moment by turning a losing situation into a very personal eviction notice for the Scarab crew. Metropolis feels like Halo 2 looking at the sandbox and deciding subtlety is overrated. You get tanks, warthogs, tunnels, open streets, rooftop fire, race, banshees, and then the game casually drops a Scarab into the city like this is a normal thing to deal with before lunch. The pacing is excellent because it keeps shifting between vehicle power fantasy and movement, where the confidence gets instantly checked by enemy fire coming from places you were not emotionally prepared for. It's one of the most fun early missions because it feels big, loud, and chaotic in the exact right way. Also, boarding the Scarab is one of the moments where the game wants you to feel like the coolest person alive, which is very generous considering it spent the rest of the mission trying to blow you up with plasma and artillery fire. I died 9 times here. It's pretty reasonable, especially for the mission that throws this much chaos at you. The number suggests Metropolis is challenging, but in a more readable and entertaining way than some of the nastier missions later on. It's dangerous, but it's the kind of dangerous that still lets you have fun before the game remembers it has jackals to work with. This moves us to Mission 6, the Arbiter. The Arbiter opens with one of the longest and most important cutscenes in the game, and it does a ton of heavy lifting for Halo 2's story. After the destruction of Halo, Theo Vandemine is dragged in as a disgraced commander and basically offered a choice between public humiliation and a much fancier form of execution. The prophets explain the title of Arbiter is reserved for moments of crisis, but it's not really an honor in the comforting sense. It's a role built on sacrifice, impossible missions, and dying in service of the Covenant. So, right away, the game reframes this character from failed villain to tragic weapon, which is a huge part of why Halo 2's story feels so much more ambitious than the first game. The cutscene also plants the next major story thread by introducing the heretic as more than just some random rebel to go stab in a gas mine. The prophets claim he is a threat because he is spreading heresy and trying to undermine the Covenant's faith, which tells us the Covenant is already starting to crack from the inside. That matters because this mission is not just about sending the Arbiter on a cool assassination job, it's about silencing an idea before it spreads. And that idea is that the prophets may not be telling the truth about the Great Journey. In other words, the Arbiter sets up the game's bigger conflict around faith, control, and political manipulation, while also making it very clear that the Arbiter is being used as both a symbol and a disposable tool. Then, once the mission actually starts, the objective is simple on paper: infiltrate the Forerunner gas mine, hunt down the heretic leader, and restore order. But because of everything the cutscene establishes, the mission already carries a lot more weight than a normal early-level campaign. This is the moment where Halo 2 stops being just Chief versus aliens and starts becoming a story about a collapsing empire trying to hold itself together with ritual, fear, and a lot of extremely dramatic speeches. Playing the Arbiter feels like Halo 2 suddenly deciding that maybe being the Master Chief was too comfortable for you. This mission is slower, moodier, and a lot more atmospheric than the Earth levels, which works because it gives the Covenant side of the story a completely different texture. Instead of charging through a war zone like a walking insurance claim, you are moving through a dark Forerunner facility that feels equal parts sacred ruin and industrial accident. Combat is still dangerous, but the pacing is more deliberate, with long stretches of eerie buildup, broken up by bursts of close-quarter fighting that reminds you Halo 2 still has plenty of ways to ruin your confidence. It's also one of the first missions that really leans into stealth energy without actually being stealth, which is very funny because the Arbiter is technically on a secret mission while carrying an energy sword and solving most problems like an angry chandelier. The whole level feels like the game is trying to seduce you into Covenant politics and spooky architecture at the same time, and somehow it works. I racked up 15 deaths here. It's a solid jump for a mission that is not pure chaos, and that says a lot about how the Arbiter creates pressure. This is not a mission that overwhelms you with spectacle. It chips away at you through tighter spaces, trickier enemy setups, and a rhythm that is easier to underestimate. In other words, it's less of a loud disaster and more of a quiet reminder that Halo 2 can absolutely still slap you around when it's being classy about it. The Oracle picks up right where the Arbiter leaves off, with the Arbiter and his strike team pushing deeper into the gas mine to finish off the heretic leader, which starts as a cleanup job but gets much bigger once the Flood show up and somehow make a bad situation feel even less professional. The real story turn comes when the Arbiter finally reaches the heretic and learns that the so-called heresy is tied to 343 Guilty Spark, who survived the destruction of the first Halo and has been telling the heretics what the ring actually does. That matters because this mission turns the Covenant religious problem into a full-blown truth problem. The heretic is not just rebelling for fun, he has seen enough to realize the prophets are hiding something massive, which makes this mission one of the clear early signs that Halo 2 is building toward a collapse from within. The Oracle feels like Halo 2 taking the spooky atmosphere from the Arbiter and deciding it was not stressful enough without zombie aliens sprinting at you from every direction. The opening Flood fights are messy, cramped, and deeply disrespectful of personal space, which gives the mission this wonderful feeling of barely controlled panic. Then the level starts mixing in the movement, verticality, and the weird Halo rhythm where 1 second you're cautiously clearing rooms and the next you're chasing a flying heretic through a gas mine, like this has somehow become a workplace safety violation. The boss fight at the end also feels very funny because after all the buildup, the heretic leader mostly feels like a guy whose main power is being annoying in 3 dimensions. It's a great mission because it keeps changing the pressure without losing the larger sense that everything inside the Covenant is starting to rot at the same time. 15 deaths here makes a lot of sense. The Oracle is not the loudest mission so far, but it is one of the sloppiest in the best and worst ways. The Flood add chaos, the interiors stay dangerous, and the mission keeps nudging you into fights that can fall apart fast if you lose control for even a second. In other words, this is Halo 2 proving it does not need a citywide war to wreck your plans. Sometimes a haunted gas mine and a flying lair will do just fine. The ending cutscene of the Oracle is where Halo 2 really starts showing its hand. After the Arbiter kills the heretic leader, Tartarus arrives, immediately taking control of the situation, capturing 343 Guilty Spark, and he makes it clear the prophets were never interested in hearing out the heretic. They wanted him silenced. More importantly, the mission confirms that Guilty Spark was the source of the heresy, meaning the Covenant's religion is now brushing it right up against the actual truth of what Halo is. So, the ending is not about the Arbiter completing his mission. It's about the prophets seizing the one witness who can help them use the ring while burying the idea that their whole belief system might be a cosmic scam with nicer robes. After the Oracle, the story snaps back to Master Chief, Johnson and Miranda Keyes, and Cortana in amber-clad following Regret's ship through slip space and discovering Installation 05, another Halo ring. Miranda immediately realizes this, and it's not just another battlefield, because Cortana confirms the ring is a super weapon that could wipe out sentient life on a galactic scale if activated. That changes the mission from simple pursuit to a full emergency response. Chief is dropped onto the ring with first platoon to secure a landing zone and push through the old ruins and jungle towards Regret's temple at the lake. Along the way, Regret's holograms keep preaching Covenant doctrine about the Great Journey and transcendence, which sounds holy, until Cortana starts mentally translating it into, this is a very religious way of describing mass death. Once the campaign rolls into Regret, the lore gets even more important. Chief overhears Regret's sermon, Cortana decodes it, and they realize he's planning to activate Halo. Miranda responds by shifting her own objective towards the index in the library, since she recognizes it as the key needed to fire the ring, just like the Installation 04 Halo. So, while Chief pushes through temples, gondolas, and underwater sections to Regret, the story is really about a race to stop the Covenant from turning blind faith into a galaxy-ending mistake. Then, the ending escalates everything again. Chief kills Regret. High Charity and the Covenant fleet arrive over her head, and the temple is blasted apart, setting up the next phase of the war with the feeling that everyone has just stumbled into a much bigger disaster than they were ready for. Together, these missions take the story from pursuit to payoff, while also making it very clear that every faction in Halo 2 is sprinting towards disaster at full speed. Chief, meanwhile, gets the opposite experience and is dragged underwater by a massive tentacle creature, which is Halo 2's ways of saying the day is still somehow going to get worse. As a combined chapter, Delta Halo and Regret feel like Halo 2 showing off everything it can do and asking whether you would like to suffer through all of it back to back. Delta Halo starts as a big open push with ODST, vehicles, bridge fights, tanks, ruins, and long sightlines that make the ring feel huge. Then Regret takes the broad military assault and funnels it into a much nastier temple gauntlet, full of towers, gondolas, underwater lifts, drones, honor guards, and one prophet who discovered that the biggest weakness in his faith is getting repeatedly punched in the face by a Spartan. It is a great two-part stretch because the pacing keeps evolving. First, it feels like a war movie, then it becomes a surgical strike, and then it becomes a very aggressive cathedral tour led by enemies who all seem deeply committed to making you regret entering the building. 28 deaths makes a lot of sense here. These missions are a combined block in my mind. This is where Halo 2 starts leaning into sustained pressure instead of isolated rough patches. Delta Halo broadens the sandbox with more space, more angles, and more ways for enemies to ruin your plans, while Regret tightens those screws with denser combat, trickier movement, and a final push that feels way more chaotic than a simple assassination mission has any right to be. Because this is the point where the campaign stops politely testing you and starts grading you with a red pen. After Chief kills Regret, the story takes another sharp turn. Regret's death brings in the Covenant fleet over Installation 5. The Ring's monitor becomes even more central to the larger plan, and the game shifts back to the Arbiter, just as the race for the Index starts getting serious. Sacred Icon sends him into the wall in the library to lower the shield, protecting the Index, which sounds important and noble until the Flood show up and turn the whole place into a religious crisis with extra tentacles. Story-wise, this mission matters because it moves the Arbiter from loyal enforcer to middle of the truth. He does not fully understand it yet. He's still following orders, but the world around him is getting harder and harder to explain through Covenant doctrine. Sacred Icon feels like Halo 2 looked at the bright open spaces of Delta Halo and said, that was nice, now get in a spooky tube. The whole mission is darker, tighter, and way more claustrophobic, with Sentinels and Flood constantly turning every room into a small-scale public health emergency. It has the great oppressive rhythm where you keep pushing deeper into Forerunner hallways that all feel vaguely sacred and extremely unsafe, like someone built a cathedral and then forgot to budget for pest control. The pacing is slower than the big surface missions, but that actually helps the tension because every fight feels sticky and messy instead of explosive. This is not a mission that wants you to feel heroic. It wants you to feel like you are knee-deep in a bad revelation with an energy sword.
Death count, 30 deaths. It makes sense here because Sacred Icon is not overwhelming in the loud blockbuster way. It's punishing in a much grimmer way. Tight spaces, flood chaos, and constant pressure from Sentinels make the whole mission feel like death by 1,000 terrible decisions. It is the kind of level that does not kill you dramatically. Sometimes it just corners you and lets the problem develop naturally.
Quarantine Zone opens up with the most important turning points in Halo 2. Arbiter finally retrieves the Sacred Icon, but the second he completes the mission, Tartarus betrays him, takes the Index for himself, and leaves him for dead, by the Prophet's orders. Miranda Keyes and Johnson are captured into the same moment, which matters more because now the Prophets have the key they need, the monitor who understands the ring, and human prisoners who can operate Forerunner systems. That betrayal is bigger than one mission twist. It is the moment Halo 2 stops hinting that the Covenant is cracking and starting to tear the whole thing open, with Tartarus and the Brutes replacing the Elites as the Prophet's favored enforcers, while the Arbiter realizes he was never being honored, just being used. From there, Quarantine Zone becomes a race across Installation 5 to catch Tartarus before he can reach the control room. The lore underneath the action is what makes this mission hit so hard. The sacred icon is not just a religious relic, it's the activation index, the literal key needed to fire Halo's weapon system, and Installation 05 is one of the Forerunner's rings built to wipe out sentient life in order to starve the Flood. So while the Arbiter is fighting through snow, Flood, Sentinels, and Brutes, the real story is that the Covenant leadership is sprinting towards an apocalypse. They still insist on calling salvation. It's a great chapter because the Arbiter personally gets betrayed, and the Empire's larger collapse suddenly becomes the story. Quarantine Zone feels like Halo 2 looked at a phrase, vehicle mission, and decided to interpret it as a threat. On paper, this sounds like a cool snowbound chase level with ghosts, a tanky vehicle section, and wide spaces to move through. In practice, it often feels like being shoved through a frozen war crime where every direction contains Floods, Brutes, Sentinels, or some combination that makes personal dignity very difficult to maintain. The scale is great, and the shifting battles between the different factions makes the whole thing feel alive, but is also one of those missions where the game keeps pretending you have freedom while quietly filling the map with new ways to get deleted. It is chaotic in that classic Halo 2 way where you feel powerful for about 6 seconds, then immediately discover the enemy had other plans and several plasma-based opinions about your future.
4 deaths is a strong sign that I hit my groove. Yes, Quarantine Zone is where the campaign really starts biting down. The mission is large and exciting, but it's also messy, volatile, and full of overlapping threats that I somehow avoided going sideways. This is Halo 2 dumping multiple disasters into one snowy corridor and asking whether you'd like to sort that out professionally. I said, nah, I'll just breeze past y'all.
This moves us into Gravemind. Gravemind opens with Halo 2 fully taking the gloves off. After Regret's death and the chaos around the temple, both Chief and Arbiter are pulled into the depths of Installation 5 and brought face to face with Gravemind, the Flood's central intelligence. In that opening cutscene, the game finally puts the truth on the table for the Arbiter. The sacred rings are not divine gateways to transcendence. They are weapons built to wipe out sentient life in order to starve the Flood. Chief confirms it because he already stopped the firing of Installation 04 in the first game, which means the heresy the Covenant had been trying to silence is, unfortunately for them, completely real. The scene matters because it collapses several story threads into one ugly revelation. The Prophets are not just wrong, they're either willfully blind or deliberately deceptive. Tartarus is carrying the Index towards the control room, and the Covenant are in the middle of splitting apart just as the Flood become a much larger threat. The Gravemind then uses both Chief and the Arbiter as pieces on the board. Chief is sent to High Charity to stop Truth before he can leave for Delta Halo's control room, while Arbiter is sent after Tartarus. So this mission is not just a cool monster introduction, it's a point where Halo 2 turns its scattered conflicts into one central crisis. Stop the ring from firing before faith, pride, and cosmic misunderstandings kill everyone. Once gameplay starts, Chief is dropping into High Charity, right as the Great Schism begins. That is the civil war between the Covenant's Brutes and Elites, and it gives the level a very different story texture from anything earlier in the game. You're no longer fighting the Covenant as a unified force, you are moving through the capital city while the Empire starts ripping itself apart in real time. Truth is trying to escape with the Index. Mercy is still in the city. Cortana is feeding Chief information from inside the Covenant network, and the whole place feels like one bad sermon away from a complete collapse. It's one of the best lore-heavy missions in the game because it makes the stakes feel political, religious, and apocalyptic all at once. Gravemind feels like Halo 2 throwing you in the middle of a civil war and then politely declining to explain why every room is already angry before you enter it. The mission is long, dense, and full of brutal crossfire, but it is also weirdly exhilarating because the combat spaces are constantly alive with Brutes and Elites trying to kill each other, while you do your best to remain a third-party observer with a very active gun. It's also the first mission where brutes really get to introduce themselves properly, which is a great little gameplay development if you enjoy enemies who respond to being shot by becoming even more offended. High Charity itself is gorgeous and chaotic, so the whole level feels like you are sprinting through a gold-plated religious meltdown, while the soundtrack quietly encourages even worse decision-making. There's also something funny about how Gravemind sounds like it should be a Flood Nightmare mission, but for the most part, actually, gameplay is Chief getting dropped into Covenant politics at the worst possible time. You're not mostly fighting zombie horror here. You are navigating the kind, violent organizational restructuring that would make any HR department simply walk into the ocean. The level keeps you moving through temples, chambers, and hanging gardens where every encounter can flip in an instant depending on who is mad at whom. And that unpredictability gives a great frantic energy. It feels cinematic in the best Halo 2 way, which is to say, it's less you feel heroic while also making sure at least one doorway per section is deeply disrespectful.
49 deaths here felt like a massive wall, especially after my 4 deaths in Quarantine Zone. This is where the momentum came to a halt because shit is hitting the fan. Basically, while the Covenant are busy destroying their own empire, they're doing a great job of destroying me as well.
This moves us into Uprising. Uprising picks up right after Gravemind turns the board upside down. The Arbiter is teleported near Delta Halo's control room and finally sees the Great Schism for what it really is. The brutes have turned on the elites, the prophets have effectively chosen extermination over loyalty, and the Covenant is no longer a united empire so much as a collapsing religion with guns. This mission matters because the betrayal stops being abstract politics and becomes personal. The Arbiter is no longer just carrying out orders for a broken system. He's now fighting through the wreckage of the system after realizing he was never being honored, only being used. The lore underneath this mission is doing a lot of work too. Truth has elevated Tartarus and the brutes, and the result is a civil war that tears apart the Covenant from the inside. In Halo 2 terms, this is one of the biggest story pivots in the entire campaign because it transforms the Arbiter from tragic enforcer into active opponent of the Prophet's plan. He is not just trying to survive a betrayal, he's trying to stop Tartarus from reaching the control room with the activation index, which means the mission ties his personal revenge directly to the larger effort to stopping Halo from firing. The mission starts rebuilding the Arbiter's side around new alliances instead of serving the Covenant's hierarchy. He begins linking up with fellow elites and scattered allies who have also been thrown aside. The shift is what gives Uprising so much weight. This is the moment. Arbiter's story stops being about obedience and becomes about clarity. He finally sees the Covenant as it is, not as it pretends to be, and that makes every fight in this mission feel like part revenge march, part political awakening, and part sprint to stop the galaxy's worst possible church service. Uprising feels like Halo 2 handing the Arbiter a grievance form, a plasma rifle, and permission to solve both problems at once. This mission is aggressive from the start, with brutes, jackals, and drones packed into some spaces that constantly threaten to become an instant disaster if you lose control even for a second. But the fun is that the chaos finally feels personal in a satisfying way. You're not fighting enemies because you are in the way or they're in the way. You're fighting your way through the species that just tried to erase your entire place in the Covenant pecking order, which gives the whole mission a very strong, I would like to speak to management violently energy. It's also one of the best Arbiter missions because it balances anger with momentum. The level keeps moving, the fights are messy, and in a good way, and ally support from other elites helps sell the feeling that the Covenant Civil War is now fully alive on the battlefield. At the same time, Halo 2 never lets the empowerment become too comfortable. Brutes hit hard, the layout can get nasty fast, and some encounters feel like the game is testing whether revenge can survive repeated blunt force trauma. The result is a mission that feels raw, direct, and wildly cathartic. The campaign has stopped whispering that things are falling apart and has now started kicking the door off the hinges.
33 deaths is brutal, but not as brutal as Gravemind. Still, this was a tough mission that took some grind. It makes sense because the level combines hard-hitting brute combat with dense encounter spaces and a story context that keeps the pressure high. This is not elegant difficulty, this is Halo 2 grabbing you by the shoulders and screaming, "The Civil War is now your problem too." In other words, the Arbiter may have found high clarity here, but my health bar mostly found suffering.
High clarity is where Halo 2 turns its story from the Covenant are in trouble into the Covenant are actively exploding in public. Chief is dropped into the middle of the Holy City just as the Great Schism is tearing it apart, with brutes and elites fighting across the Covenant capital while Truth tries to escape aboard the Forerunner Dreadnought. On top of that, the Flood arrive and start overrunning the city, which matters because High Charity is not just another battleground, it's the political and religious heart of the Covenant. So this mission is doing a lot all at once. It shows the Covenant collapsing from civil war, it shows the Flood turning the collapse into a full infestation, and it makes Truth's escape feel even more dangerous because now the one leader most committed to the lie is heading to Earth. The lore around the Prophet gets even uglier here too. Truth leaves Mercy behind during the Flood attack, effectively sacrificing him and consolidating power for himself, which tells you everything you need to know about how much Holy Brotherhood is actually worth when the plan starts going sideways. Chief finds Mercy being infected, learns that Truth is heading to Earth to finish what we started, and realizes the situation is now bigger than simply recovering the Index. Cortana then makes the call that defines the end of Chief's side of Halo 2. She stays behind on High Charity so she can detonate in Amber-Clad's reactors if Truth tries to fire the ring, while Chief boards the Dreadnought to pursue him. Story-wise, this is a great mission because it ends with a victory that barely feels like one. Truth escapes, Cortana's left behind, and the Flood now own the Covenant's front porch. The Great Journey is Halo 2 cashing in on every story check it has been writing since the Heretic. Tartarus reaches Delta Halo's control room, and he has the activation index. Miranda Keyes is his prisoner, and 343 Guilty Spark is right there to explain exactly what Halo really is. Johnson and the Arbiter intercept him, and this is where Truth becomes unavoidable. Guilty Spark flat out confirms that the rings are weapons built to wipe out sentient life so the Flood can starve, which means the Great Journey is not salvation at all. It's extinction with better branding. When Tartarus refuses to believe it and doubles down on the Prophet's lie, the mission turns into a final argument between faith and reality. Except this argument has a gravity hammer. The lore payoff here is what makes the mission land so well. The Arbiter has gone from disgraced commander to obedient martyr, to someone who finally sees the Covenant for what it is, a system built on manipulation, hierarchy, and a religious promise that was always pointed at a mass grave. Johnson matters just as much in this scene because Tartarus needs a human reclaimer to actually operate the ring, which ties the human side of the story directly into the Covenant collapse. So the final mission is not just about stopping one angry brute, it's about preventing the Prophet's entire plan from becoming irreversible. The Great Journey feels like Halo deciding that the cleanest way to end this campaign is with a boss fight, a Civil War payoff, and a vehicle section, and several more chances to embarrass you just in case you were getting comfortable. The opening push is all momentum, with the Arbiter and Elite allies fighting through brutes on their way to the control room, and it has a great late game energy, where every encounter feels like it actually matters. Then, the Tartarus fight arrives, and suddenly the mission turns into a very stressful team project where Johnson is the only person allowed to remove the Bosch's shield, and everyone else is trying to get launched into next week. This is chaotic, dramatic, and a little funny because Tartarus is one of those bosses who does not just want to kill you, he wants to do it in a way that feels deeply disrespectful. What makes this level memorable is what it feels like. It's a payoff mission. Instead of just a final exam, you're fighting besides elites who were your enemies a few hours ago. The Covenant is collapsing around you. The ring is seconds away from activation, and the whole thing is the exact right amount of end-of-the-world panic. Even the arena design itself fits that mood. It's big enough to feel dramatic and focused enough that every mistake gets your attention immediately. Basically, Halo 2 ends by asking whether you can survive one last giant mess while the galaxy's worst church split reaches its logical conclusion. I racked up 32 deaths here. The Great Journey is one of the nastier endgame spikes, which makes sense because the mission combines brute pressure, ally dependence, and a final boss that can go wrong fast if the rhythm breaks. It's the kind of ending that feels climactic because it earns the stress. Halo 2 is not just asking you to finish the fight, it's asking you to survive one last piece of beautifully organized nonsense. So, we went from Halo 1, a game with lighter lore that launched one of gaming's biggest franchises, to Halo 2, which cranks everything up. The story is bigger, the stakes are higher, and if you were not fully hooked before, you definitely are now. Out of the games so far, this one has easily been my favorite. But it's also way more brutal. Even knowing that you don't need it, even as I knew you didn't need to take every fight or kill every enemy to reach the next checkpoint, this game still punished me constantly. I ended this run with 264 deaths, with the highest total coming from Uprising. It makes it pretty clear that Halo 2 is definitely harder than Halo 1. And that's saying something because I finished Halo 1 with 241 deaths while still playing with a much less efficient way in terms of I was taking on pretty much every combat section in Halo 1 for the majority of the game. As this game, I didn't do that the entire time. So if I had used the smarter approach in Halo 1, my death count would have definitely been lower. So Halo 2 is definitely taking the crown so far. But the real question is, how does this stack up against the rest of the series?
What's that?
A beacon,
What's it doing?
communicating at superluminal speeds with the frequency
Communicating with what?
of the other installations.
Show me.
Fail-safe protocol. In the event of unexpected shutdown, the entire system will move to standby status. All remaining platforms are now ready for remote activation.
Remote activation? From here?
Don't be ridiculous.
Listen, Tinkerbell, don't make me...
Then where? Where would someone go to activate the other rings?
Why the Ark? Of course.
And where, Oracle, is that?
We've got a new contact, unknown classification. It isn't one of ours. Take it out.
This is Spartan 117.
Anyone hear me? Over.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
Silence fills the empty grave now that I have gone. But my mind is not at rest, for questions linger on. I will ask, and you will answer.
All right. Shoot.
Heading into the third game, I already know Halo is much harder than the BioShock series, but having played through the first two games, I'm running into fewer skill issues, so this third entry is going to be easy, right?
Every game.
Every game.
Such a waste, bro.
Well now, maybe not that easy. We finished off Halo 2 with Chief ready to end the fight we started. So, naturally, Halo 3 starts, and it launches us right into the action. The opening cutscene sets the tone immediately. The Arbiter and Sergeant Johnson are deep in the jungle on Earth, searching for Master Chief after a fall from orbit. The dialogue establishes two critical things right away. First, humanity is scattered and on the defensive. Second, the Arbiter is now fully integrated as an ally, not just a temporary truce. When Johnson says he never gets me anything, he sounds like a nagging wife, but hey, it's a pretty funny way to cut the tension, just enough to remind you who these characters are under pressure. We then take control and push through Covenant forces occupying the jungle, which tells us the war has fully reached Earth's surface in a more grounded, desperate way. This is not a grand space opera moment, it's a search and rescue in hostile territory. As you move forward, the mission reinforces that Chief's absence actually matters. Marines are holding on, but barely, and the Covenant presence feels organized and aggressive. The reunion is quick and efficient, no dramatic speech, just immediate reintegration into the fight. The ending cutscene with Cortana's fragmented message adds a layer of urgency and mystery. It hints that something bigger is happening beyond just Earth's invasion, pulling the story forward into the next mission, This level matters because it reestablishes the core trio, resets the stakes on Earth, and quietly pivots the narrative toward a larger, more unknown threat. This mission is Halo's comfort food, in the best way. Open jungle spaces, flexible combat, and multiple angles to approach every fight. The first half is almost deceptive. It is slowly controlled and gives you room to relearn the sandbox. Then the second half tightens up hard. More enemies, more crossfire, and way less room for mistakes. Brutes start demanding respect immediately, especially when they push aggressively forward and force you out of cover. It's a clean reintroduction into Halo's rhythm. Break shields, control space, don't get greedy. Also a reminder that the game is happy to let you feel confident right before it humbles you. 5 deaths here. All the deaths showing up in the second half of the mission, basically meaning the game let me go on a peaceful jungle field trip first, then lock the exits and release the brutes. The first half is look at the scenery, take your time. The second half is surprise exam with no notes. I had just enough confidence to start pushing fights like I was the main character, and the brutes immediately stepped in like the substitute teacher who did not care about your excuses. This moves us to Mission 2, Crow's Nest. Picking up immediately after Sierra 117, the story shifts from jungle survival to full military coordination as Master Chief returns to a UNSC command bunker beneath Earth's surface. The opening cutscene establishes this as one of humanity's last organized strongholds, with Commander Miranda Keyes and Lord Hood coordinating a desperate defensive. The tone here is different. Less scrappy survival, more structured last stand. You're no longer just fighting to regroup. You're now part of the chain of command again. The sense of stability does not last long. The Covenant quickly breached the base, turning what should be a safe command center into a collapsing war zone. This mission reveals how fragile humanity's position really is. Even their most fortified locations are vulnerable. As the attack unfolds, the objective shifts from defense to evacuation, reinforcing that the UNSC is reacting, not controlling the situation. The introduction of the bomb threat adds urgency and shows the Covenant are not just attacking blindly, they're executing coordinated high-impact strikes. One of the most important narrative beats comes through Cortana's continued fragmented transmission. Her message is still incomplete, but now it's clear that it's tied to something critical, something that could change the direction of the war. This creates a second layer of tension running alongside the immediate survival objective. By the end of the mission, the base is effectively lost, and the UNSC is forced to fall back again, of course, because we blow up the base. The key shift here is clarity. The war on Earth is going poorly, but Cortana's message is starting to suggest there is potentially a solution here. This mission hands the story forward by pushing the character out of the defense mode and toward whatever larger play Cortana is starting to point to. This mission feels like tight hallways, explosions everywhere, and Marines who step in front of your grenade with confidence of someone who absolutely never learned a lesson. The mission trades open jungle freedom for a cramped, sweaty mess where everything is way too close and way too aggressive. You are constantly moving, constantly reacting, and occasionally wondering if the base was built out of drywall, duct tape, and blind optimism. It's less about strategy and more about surviving the next 30 seconds without getting pinned in a corner while a brute rushes you like you owe money in a bad decision. 6 deaths here. Slight increase from the first mission, and it makes sense. The tighter spaces reduce your options and punish positioning mistakes faster. Most deaths here actually came from getting overwhelmed, not necessarily outplayed. This moves us to Mission 3, Salvo's Highway. Crow's Nest ends with evacuation, and Salvo's Highway wastes no time showing what that actually looks like in practice. Chief is deployed topside into a full-scale retreat where UNSC forces are trying to regroup after losing one of their key defensive positions. The opening moments immediately reframe the battle. This is no longer about holding ground, it's about surviving long enough to reposition and strike back. The mission introduces a major shift in scale. You are no longer confined to hallways or jungle paths. The war opens up into wide highways, open terrain, and large vehicle engagements. This is humanity attempting to fight back with everything they have left. Sergeant Johnson continues to act as your anchor, reinforcing that this is still an organized effort, even if it feels like controlled chaos. Narratively, the Covenant presence feels heavier and more entrenched. Race, choppers, and fortified positions signal that the enemy is not just invading, they are establishing control. The UNSC is not pushing them out yet. They are disrupting and delaying. The mission also continues to build towards Cortana's message in the background. It's not resolved here, but it lingers as a reminder that whatever the real solution is, it's not going to come from brute force on Earth alone. By the end, the UNSC manages to carve out a temporary path forward, but it does not feel like a victory. It feels like momentum. This mission matters because it transitions the campaign from reactive survival to early stages of a counteroffensive. We're no longer just escaping, we're starting to push back, even if it's only slightly. This is where Halo 3 hands you the keys and pats you on the back, and absolutely doesn't even check if you know how to drive. Wide open spaces, vehicles everywhere, and every fight slowly turns into a full-blown insurance claim. 1 second you're cruising in a Warthog like you are in a recruitment ad, the next you're getting deleted by a Wraith that has been watching you make bad decisions for the last 15 seconds. It's fun, chaotic, and feels like the traffic laws were replaced with whoever explodes last wins. 7 deaths here, another small jump from the first and second mission, and it kind of tracks because there's the increased scale and chaos. Vehicles add power, but also unpredictability. Most deaths here were pretty sudden from heavy damage, not slow mistakes. The mission tests awareness more than mechanics. This moves us to mission 4, the Storm. Salvo Highway builds momentum, and the Storm is where that momentum turns into a direct counterattack. Master Chief joins Sergeant Johnson and the UNSC forces in a coordinated push to take down a massive Covenant anti-air tower that is locking down the region. The opening framing makes this clear. This is not survival anymore. This is a targeted strike to remove a key piece of Covenant control and open the door for a larger offensive. As the mission progresses, the scale of the conflict continues to grow. You move through entrenched Covenant positions, indicating that they're not just occupying Earth, they're fortifying it. The resistance is heavier, more organized, and more desperate. The mission also begins to visually and narratively hint at something larger, with the massive structure looming in the distance. The Covenant are building towards something, not just fighting to win. A major turning point comes with the Scarab encounter. This is not just a gameplay spectacle, it reinforces how dominant Covenant war machines are and how much effort it takes to bring one down. Destroying it feels like a meaningful blow, even if it's just one piece of a much larger force. It is a small but necessary win that keeps the UNSC offensive alive. By the end of the mission, the anti-air tower is destroyed, which directly enables the next phase of the campaign. This is one of the first clear tactical victories for humanity in Halo 3. However, the victory is framed carefully. You do not win the war, you remove a barrier. The mission matters because it transitions the story from scattered resistance into coordinated strikes that begin to shift the battlefield, while still hinting that the real objectives lie beyond what is happening on Earth. This mission is Halo saying, you wanted a big battle, here you go, and then immediately over-delivers like it's trying to show off. Open fights, vehicles everywhere, and then suddenly you're climbing on a Scarab like Peter Dinklage squaring up to Zing Zhou, the tallest female basketball player. Completely outmatched on paper, but way too committed to back out now. It's chaotic in the best way, just enough structure to keep things from fully falling apart while everything around you definitely is. Also, a great reminder that if you ignore a Wraith for more than 5 seconds, it's going to take that personally and it's going to file a very explosive complaint. 5 deaths here, not much to say about it, other than the fact that I've clearly improved since taking on Halo 1. The first game I would spray and pray, not targeting a single enemy. This time around, I know if I'm risking damage, I have to make sure I trade for a kill to even the odds one little bit more. This gets us to Floodgate. The Storm ends with a sense of momentum, and Floodgate immediately rips that away. The opening cutscene shifts tone hard as a crashed Covenant ship slams into Earth, releasing the Flood into the city. What looked like a contained war between humanity and the Covenant instantly becomes something far worse. Master Chief and Arbiter are forced to respond to an outbreak that no one is prepared to handle. This mission is less about winning and more about containing damage. The Flood spreads rapidly, infecting both humans and Covenant, collapsing the idea of clear sides in the conflict. One of the most important narrative beats comes through the reappearance of 343 Guilty Spark, who arrives with a very specific goal: stop the Flood at all costs. His presence reframes the situation entirely. The war on Earth is no longer matters if the Flood is not contained. The reveal of Cortana's message becomes critical here. Her warning about a solution, something that could stop the Flood, finally starts to make sense. The message is not just emotional noise, it is direction. The mission connects the dots between her absence, the Flood's return, and the need to move beyond Earth entirely. By the end, the immediate outbreak is contained through destruction, not precision. It's messy and costly, but necessary. The key shift is now clear. The Covenant war is no longer the primary threat, the Flood is. The mission matters because it completely reframes the stakes of the campaign and pushes the story toward a larger, more existential conflict. Everything here is faster, uglier, and way less predictable. Like, thinking it is love at first sight and then realizing mid-conversation there's absolutely nothing going on upstairs. Enemies do not take cover, they just sprint at you like you're personally offended their entire bloodline. It's controlled panic the whole time, and every fight feels like it's one bad decision away from completely falling apart. Also, a great reminder that sticking around to clean up is how you get dogpiled in about 5 seconds, like you overstayed your welcome at the worst possible party. 3 deaths here. This mission is one of the easiest ones because you can breeze through the checkpoints without much combat, so that's exactly what I did. The Ark is the next mission. Floodgate completely shifts the stakes, and the Ark answers that shift with scale. The opening cutscene shows a massive portal opening near Earth, created by the Covenant as a part of their larger plan. Master Chief, alongside with Sergeant Johnson, Commander Miranda Keyes, and the Arbiter, make the call to follow it. This is one of the first major turning points in Halo 3. The fight is no longer for Earth, it's for control of whatever lies beyond the portal. Arriving on the Ark reframes the entire conflict. This is not just another battlefield, it's the origin point of the Halo rings themselves, a place that exists outside the galaxy and holds the power to activate or stop the entire Halo network. The Covenant, led by the Prophet of Truth, are no longer just invading, they are executing their endgame. Their goal is to fire the rings and fulfill the Great Journey, even if it wipes out all life in the process. The mission reveals just how close the Covenant are to success. Truth is not scrambling anymore. He's advancing with purpose, using the Ark as the final stage of his plan. At the same time, the UNSC and the elites are now fully aligned, marking a complete shift from the fractured alliances of Halo 2. This is no longer a temporary truce, it's a unified front against a shared existential threat. The scale of the Ark itself reinforces the narrative weight. Massive Forerunner structures, endless mechanical landscapes, in the sense that you are standing on something far bigger than a single war. Cortana's message continues to loom in the background, now clearly tied to this location and whatever solution she hinted at earlier. By the end of the mission, the objective is simple, but massive in implication. Push forward, stop Truth, and prevent activation. This mission matters because it fully transitions the story from war for survival into a race to stop total annihilation. This board is set, and all factions are now converging on the same final objective. This mission is long. Like, did I accidentally start a second campaign long? It's even worse because my dumbass thought I missed an objective, so I restarted about 1/3 the way through, and I can say without a doubt, this was my least favorite mission. Huge vehicle sections, massive battles, and just enough chaos to keep things constantly falling apart and death rolling in. 1 minute, you're rolling with a convoy, next you're getting shredded by 3 different angles of fire and wondering, who approved this route? It's epic, but also absolutely makes you earn it. 59 deaths here. This is a spike. Restarting the mission after 7 deaths didn't really move the mark, but much because I was trying to rush through since I was behind on the video production, and hey look, I'm still uploading a week late. C'est la vie. Length plus scale plus sustained combat pressure equals exhaustion and mistakes. The mission throws everything at you for an extended period, which increases the chances of small errors stacking up. If I wasn't stubborn on trying to breeze through and taking on combat sections more frequently, I would have easily cleared the mission with fewer deaths, but why do that when I could run the same checkpoint 20 times, right? High deaths here. It's much less about unfair moments and more about cumulative pressure wearing me down over time. This gets us into the Covenant. Technically, this is supposed to be the longest mission in the game, but I restarted and that made the time to complete the previous mission longer. So the Ark set the stage and the Covenant is the payoff. This mission is the direct assault on the Prophet of Truth and his attempt to activate the Halo rings. From the opening, it's clear. This is the moment. Everything has been building toward. Master Chief, the Arbiter, and the combined UNSC and elite forces launch a full-scale offensive on Truth's position. What makes this mission matter more is how it resolves multiple arcs at once. The alliance between humans and elites fully pays off here, not just in story but in execution. You're fighting alongside former enemies against a shared threat, and it finally feels unified instead of fragile. As you push deeper into the Covenant stronghold, it becomes clear that Truth is completely committed. There's no fallback plan. He will activate the rings, no matter what the cost. The mission escalates with layered objectives, anti-air defensive, scarabs, and heavily fortified positions, all reinforcing that this is the Covenant's last stand. Then the Flood arrive. This is the turning point within the turning point. The Flood, crashing the fight, forces an uneasy, temporary cooperation, reframing the battlefield again. The Gravemind is no longer a distant threat, it's here interfering directly in the outcome of the war. The final confrontation with Truth is not just a boss moment, it's the collapse of the Covenant's leadership and ideology. The Arbiter Executing truth closes his arc from disgraced commander to one who ends the Covenant's religious crusades. It's clean, direct, and long overdue. By the end, one war is effectively over. The Covenant as a unified force is finished, but the mission makes it clear this is not victory. We trade one enemy for another. The Flood remains, and Cortana's solution is still unresolved. This mission matters because it delivers the payoff of the Covenant conflict while immediately pivoting the narrative toward the final Flood threat. This is Halo at full chaos. Big battles, 2 scarabs, and just enough friendly fire, potential to make you question your life choices. Every fight feels like a set piece, and the game keeps stacking them like it's trying to prove a point. It is awesome, but also the kind of mission where you survive by just barely holding on and holding everything together. But since I took a break before taking this mission on, I was much more composed, so I only had 20 deaths here. Some fair difficulty, but nothing compared to the Ark, in my opinion. This gets us into Cortana. The Covenant ends one war, and Cortana drops you straight into something far worse. The opening makes the objective brutally clear. Chief is going back into the flood-infested High Charity to receive Cortana. This is not a strategic strike. This is a rescue mission inside the most dangerous environment in the series. High Charity is no longer a city, it's a flood hive controlled by the Gravemind, and the mission leans heavily into that transformation. The level constantly feeds you fragments of Cortana's dialogue and the Gravemind, mixing memories, warnings, and emotional breakdowns. These are not just story beats, they are reinforcing that she has been under psychological attack for the entire game. Her message earlier was not just about a solution, it was her call for help. Narratively, this mission is about cost. You're not pushing forward to win a battle, you're walking through the consequences of failing to stop the Flood earlier. The environment itself tells the story. Organic growth, distorted architecture, and endless infection show that the Flood does not just occupy, it consumes and repurposes everything. When you finally reach Cortana, the payoff is intentionally grounded. There's no grand speech, just recovery and immediate urgency to leave. The key is revealed. The key reveal is that she has the index and knowledge tied to stopping the Halo network, confirming that her survival is critical to the end of this conflict. The mission closes, handing off directly into the final act. You have the pieces you need, but now you have to survive long enough to use it. This mission matters because it resolves Cortana's arc, deepens the threat of the Flood through direct exposure, and sets up the final solution to the Halo rings. It is both emotional payoff and narrative setup for the game. This mission is stress, tight corridors, infinite feeling enemies, and zero personal space. The Flood do not knock, they just show up. It feels like the game is constantly asking, what if we just added more? And then immediately doing it. You're not clearing rooms, you're just trying to survive them. I racked up 17 deaths here. It's a little bit higher, but it's kind of expected given the environment. Tight spaces remove your options and amplify pressure. Usually the Flood are the easiest parts of the game, in my opinion, in the past games, but that was always because they never really had a massively punishing ranged fighter. But this mission changes that, and they are aggressive as hell. Most of my deaths came from just getting slaughtered by those long-range, needle-shooting bastards. This gets us into Halo, the final mission. Cortana gave us the solution. Use the index to fire the partially constructed Halo ring, and the mission Halo is this execution. The mission opens with Master Chief and Cortana, along with the Arbiter, arriving at the newly constructed Halo ring. This is the final gamble. Instead of stopping the rings from firing, the plan is to fire the incomplete ring in a controlled way to wipe out the Flood. While sparing the rest of the galaxy, it's risky, imperfect, and exactly the kind of solution Cortana hinted at earlier. This mission reinforces how fragile the plan is. The ring is unfinished, unstable, and surrounded by Flood forces trying to stop you. At the same time, 343 Guilty Spark returns, initially assisting, but clearly uneasy about the idea of firing an incomplete installation. The tension builds through the level. Sparks represents protocol and preservation of the ring. Chief represents necessity. As you push through the mission, the Flood presence feels relentless, but also desperate. This is their last chance to stop activation. The deeper you go, the more it becomes clear that this is not just about winning anymore, it's about ending things before they get worse. The turning point comes when Guilty Spark fully rejects this plan. Right before we activate the rings, or right before Sergeant Johnson activates the ring, he goes berserk. He attacks Sergeant Johnson suddenly and brutally kills him and snaps any illusion of cooperation. This moment matters because it reinforces a core theme. Even allies built on logic will turn if their purpose is threatened. Johnson's death also lands as one of the few grounded emotional losses in the series. Since he used space magic to survive the first ring, he became a core character for the series. Since one of our main party members just got murked, we return the favor and destroy 343 Guilty Spark, removing the last obstacle to firing the ring. We activate the ring, and the final escape begins. This mission matters because it delivers the final solution to the Flood, resolves Guilty Spark's arc, and raises the stakes one last time by forcing you to survive the consequences of your own actions. 9 deaths here, a drop from Cortana, and it makes sense, as I was a little more tame in rushing through things. The final vehicle escape is really more cinematic than anything else, so all the deaths came from the initial climb to activate the ring and the boss. So, in conclusion, we went from Halo 2, a game that expanded the universe and raised the stakes, to Halo 3, which brings everything to a head and actually finishes the fight. The story pulls all the threads together, the Covenant collapse, the Flood becoming the real problem, and the scale jumps from saving Earth to stopping total annihilation. Feels like a payoff game. Almost every mission is either setting up or delivering on something that has been built or building since Halo 1. Out of the 3 so far, this one was definitely the easiest. I totaled 131 deaths. This is in part because my skill at the games was definitely increasing, and in part because the Arbiter Companion is constantly respawning, helping to catch some fire. With that, we can finally answer which Halo from the original trilogy is the hardest. Halo 1, I had 241 deaths, with the least amount of skill. Halo 2, my skills improved, but I still had 264 deaths. And, as I just said, Halo 3, I had 131 deaths, making Halo 2 take the crown for the hardest Halo game, at least as it relates to the original trilogy. That said, I still have Halo 3, ODST, Halo Reach, and Halo 4 to take on. So, once all is said and done, I'll be able to rank the hardest Halo game of the Master Chief Collection. So, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see those videos. Otherwise, just tune in next week.
If we don't make it,
We'll make it.
it's been an honor serving